Brandon Luffman asked if I would like to talk about the Frankfurt School and backdoor socialism. We had another request for that, the Frankfurt School versus another school. I don't know what the other school is, Austrian school or something. All I know is the Frankfurt School. I've put off the Frankfurt School for 4 or 5 episodes in a row now, so let me give you my little Frankfurt School spiel. I do a lot of Tea Party speeches, and the first thing, I do a what we believe thing, and the first part of the speech is how did we get into this trouble, and the second part of the speech is how do we get out of it. So I'll save you the how do we get out of it. But let me talk about the first part of this. It kind of goes into what I was talking about before. If you look at civilization, if you look at the history of civilization, you're struck by something remarkable. You're struck by how similar the pattern of all civilizations are. It's a gradual rise over the course of centuries. People have great pride in their civilization. They're struggling. There's external threats. There's constant cooperation. There's constant heroism. There's constant hard work. There's all of these things. And over time, civilization has enormous power. You know, it's a city is a powerful thing. It has standing armies. It has agriculture. It has walls. It has all these things. So civilizations grow, and as they grow, they become more powerful. And eventually, a civilization reaches a point where it becomes more powerful than anybody else, and now it really has no more threats anymore. And once it sits at the height of its powers, the collapse of the civilization in historical times is virtually instantaneous. Slow, gradual climb, and then boom, down it goes. The Russians say that a fish rots from the head down. They're exactly right. It's the elites that lose their belief in the civilization, and they open up the gates of the city while the common man is out there giving his life on the wall defending it. So anybody who looks at America today can see that we are at a civilization at the height of its powers that is undergoing profound moral and ethical rot, and we're in very deep trouble. And if it weren't for things like the internet, I'd be in Montana stocking up on beans and ammo. But I'm not. I'm out in the fight. That's where you should be too, because we're going to change history. So how did we get into the kind of trouble we're in now? What of all these different cycles of civilization in history, what does this American cycle look like? What does our cycle look like? Well, as it turns out, the source of all of our problems can be rooted to the years right after World War I. Most people think World War II is the defining event, but it was really World War I that really had a profound effect on the people that got us into this kind of trouble. Right after World War I, right around the late teens and early 1920s, a bunch of Marxists got together and they looked at the wreckage of World War I, and they basically said, what happened? You have to understand that Marxism was sold as science. Marxism is not political theory to Marxists. Marxism is science. Certain things will happen in a scientifically predictable way. There will be industrialization, then the workers will take over the means of production, and then the means of production will be shed by all, and then a giant government will come to take place which will destroy capitalism, and when capital has been destroyed, then the government essentially will go away and we'll all live in peace and harmony, and the end goal of communism is essentially anarchy, and they're the first to admit it. So this was science, predicted, and it was shown to be science, economic science. And after World War I, the Marxists of the world got together and they basically said, what happened? Because Marxism predicted that Marxism would come to the industrialized countries, the places that had an economy. Capitalism required this kind of industrialized society. Marxism predicted that communism would come to Great Britain, and it would come to France, and it would come to Germany, it would come to America, it would come to the industrialized countries. And the Marxists after World War I looked around and they said, well, that's crazy. Not only did it not come there, it came to the one place where it shouldn't have come. Agricultural Russia, which was 300 years behind Europe when communism came to Russia. So these Marxists got together and formed what we would today call a think tank. And they called it the Institute for Marxism, which is a little on the nose for me, but that's what they decided to call it. And the Institute for Marxism set up shop in Frankfurt University in Frankfurt, Germany. Now today we call this think tank, for short form, we call it the Frankfurt School. And these people were brilliant people. Now, if it had been you and I, and you were concerned about the plight of the poor, and working conditions were not good during the early part of the Industrial Revolution, and I almost said crony capitalism, but I'm not going to use those two words together. Mercantilism led to monopolies and a lot of abuses of what should have been a free market system. So these Marxists looked around at the Frankfurt School, at the Institute for Marxism, and they said, you know what? This revolution is not going to come through the economy, because those rotten sons of bitches, those capitalist sons of guns, have generated so much wealth through industry and capitalism that, of course, the people aren't going to rise up in revolution. My God, these people have electricity and they have paved floors. As a matter of fact, in America, some of these workers have cars, for God's sakes. Of course, they're not going to launch a revolution. Success bred by capitalism eliminated the social pressure for the economic revolution that the socialists and the communists had predicted as theory. Now, if it had been you and me, decent people who had genuine concerns about the poor and conditions, we would have looked around the world in the 1920s in the Frankfurt School, and we would have said, hey, things are getting better, fantastic, let's pack up our bags and go home, happy days. But no, you have to understand this about these people that we face, about these progressives, about these Marxists. And that is this. These people have no religion, they have no hobbies, they have no lives. It's all politics to them, and they believe their mission. The reason that the press lies about these things is because they think they have a higher calling. The higher calling is to bring Eden to earth, to bring paradise on earth. And since Marxism wasn't going to come through the economy and through the workers, the geniuses at the Frankfurt School said, okay, if we can't bring paradise on earth in through the economy and through the worker, we'll bring it in differently. We're going to bring it in through the culture. And the vanguard of the revolution is not going to be the worker, it's going to be the dispossessed. So the Frankfurt School basically came up with a number of different ideas and theories, and there's an awful lot to be said about them. But the short form is this. The Frankfurt School developed two ideas that they would use to destroy America, the West, but America in particular. Capitalism, freedom, democracy, the entire idea of the individual has to be destroyed for the collective. So they looked at what America was, and they came up with two theories, two ideas. One of them is their sword, which they would use to attack with, and the other was their shield, which they would use for defense. The sword was called critical theory. Now, critical theory is the idea that you create a philosophy that does nothing but criticize and attack the dominant culture. And if you have kids who are in college today, or grandkids who are in college, or if you're in college, you almost certainly had them go to a school where they teach, because critical theory is taught everywhere. Critical theory is the idea that we're going to launch attacks on the dominant culture, that's us, from all different sides, but we're certainly going to make sure that those sides don't attack each other. Critical theory says that the radical blacks and radical feminists and the radical lesbians and all these other people don't attack each other. They all just attack the middle. So critical theory says criticize, tear down, deconstruct all of Western culture. We all know how that works. But the great lie of critical theory is that they don't provide perspective and they don't provide an alternative. What do I mean by that? Well, critical theory would tell in black studies at universities, African American studies or whatever, they will basically tell those students that America is the most uniquely racist country in the history of the world, that there's never been a greater injustice than human slavery, black slavery in America. It is the source of all slavery, America is, and that all of the civilization that you see around you today was built on the back of slaves. White people sat on their veranda sipping mint juleps while black people built everything, and so therefore we owe them that. It's owed to them. It's actually theirs. They actually built it and they just had it stolen from them. That's what they teach. Now, needless to say, American slavery was the great single stain on our history. Slavery is a stain on human history. But when I say they don't provide perspective and they don't provide alternative, let's just take slavery as an example. 11 million, anywhere between 9 and 11 million Africans were removed from Africa during the African slave trade of the 16, 17, 1800s. And of the 11 million that were removed from Africa, 800,000 of them came to the United States. That's, 7, 8, 9%. The vast majority went to the Caribbean and to European colonies there. So the vast majority, 9 out of 10 of the slaves that were taken out of Africa didn't come to America. They went to the Caribbean. Please understand, I don't have to explain this to you, but I do know how the left thinks. This is not me saying slavery is swell, right? No one's saying slavery is swell. This is this kind of straw man argument. What we are saying is that America is not uniquely slaveholding country. Perspective also means that most of the slaves that were rounded up in Africa as a result of white racism were captured by other blacks. There was a king, an African king, and I can't remember his name, but he basically had a tribe, and their tribe he became rich, and his tribe became rich by rounding up Africans and selling them to white people. No one talks about that either, because that's perspective. No one talks about the fact that in the 1800s, you had things like indentured servitude. Right now in America, and we have freedom is digital. You're either a free person or you're a slave. But no one talks about the fact that there was indentured servitude, there were apprentices, there were people who owed money to the company store who, by all intents and purposes, were slaves. No one is saying this to defend slavery. I'm saying this to provide the perspective that critical theory not only doesn't provide but can't provide. So when I say it doesn't provide perspective, that's one thing. And when I say it doesn't provide an alternative, what it means is critical theory, as they attack America and American culture, cannot show, because it's impossible to show, any other real-world country that did it better. I'm often amazed at hearing Swedes talk about racism in America, or French people talking about racism in America, in populations that are absolutely homogenous and uniform. You know, there's not I don't think, we have a black president in America. I don't believe there's a black mayor in all of France. I don't think there's a black mayor or governor or anything like that. It's just a joke, right? So it's not done better anywhere else. So what they're really saying is America is flawed. Of course we're flawed. It's the real world. It's that little human nature thing in the box. So critical theory tells all of these grievance groups to attack the center. And the Frankfurt School understood that you could not defeat a country that's motto was e pluribus unum, out of many one. New people who gave up everything they believed in to come to a new country and start as new people. You cannot destroy a country like that. The only way you can destroy a country like that is to get rid of e pluribus unum and start dividing the country up into tribes and interest groups. And that's what critical theory does. It says to homosexuals, this is the most homophobic country in the history of the world. Doesn't tell them about all the gays that are hung on construction cranes in Iran. It doesn't do any of that stuff. It tells blacks that you've had the thing stolen from you. It tells women that this is a patriarchal, chauvinistic society where we do nothing but keep women down and men are just louts and drunks or idiots and man-children and all this other stuff. And again and again and again and again and again. So that's the sword. That's what the Frankfurt School attacks with. Divide the country into tribes, have all the tribes not attack each other but attract the middle, and bring down the confidence in the dominant culture, destroy people's confidence in who they are. The most vitriolic comments I get when I speak about American greatness come from 20-year-old American kids, by far. By far. Europeans, nobody has the problem with this that American kids do. It's worked. So that's their sword. What's their shield? The shield of the Frankfurt School was an idea called political correctness. Political correctness basically was this idea. They knew that with critical theory, that by attacking the dominant culture, pretty soon the dominant culture would counterattack. They'd fight back. They'd start responding to these lies the way I just did. And people would start thinking and they wouldn't have their way. So they decided to come up with a shield called critical theory. And critical theory basically says that certain arguments are out of bounds. We're not going to discuss them. We're not going to argue them because we're going to place them out of bounds. We're going to determine that they're a form of hate speech, which we will define at our leisure. And if we define it as hate speech, that means we don't have to argue the merits of anything. We simply have to say, you're a racist, I'm not going to listen to you. You're a homophobe. We don't have to listen to homophobes. You're a misogynist. We don't listen to misogynists. Political correctness is a way to get you to shut up. And it works. And I'll tell you why it works. Political correctness works because it is dependent on the decency of the people upon which the charge is leveled at. For example, I don't know if you've ever really thought about this, but charges of racism only work against people who aren't racist. If you say something and somebody says, you're a racist, shut up, that's racist, you will shut up. Why? Because you're not a racist, because you're a decent person, and the idea of being called a racist is so disgusting to you that it works, makes you shut up. When you talk to real racists, you know, the guys in the white hats and hoods, or the guys with the armbands, those people are proud of being racist. You don't go up to a Ku Klux Klan meeting and say, you know, I've been here for 7 or 8, 9 meetings now, and I'm detecting a very strong anti-American thread here. They'll say, hello, pointy hat, you know, robes. Yeah, we're racist. You don't go up to Adolf Hitler and say, I've read your book, sir, and I detect some very serious anti-Semitic overtones. Of course he's a racist. But charges of racism work against people like you and me because we're not racist. And the idea of being called a racist is repugnant and disgusting. And so we shut up. And that's the goal of political correctness. And don't ever have a moment's thought about it as anything other than that. Political correctness is here to get you to shut up. I don't care anymore. Once we elected Barack Obama and once the Tea Party started to criticize Barack Obama for his spending and his socialism and his policies without saying boo about his skin color, and they called the Tea Party racist, once that happened, I realized they will always call us racist. It's not like they don't know that we're not. They know we're not. It is a weapon that they will continue to use, and so I don't care anymore. You want to call me a racist? I don't care. You're going to call me a racist no matter what I say. If I disagree with President Obama, I'm a racist by definition. Jeremy Boring said racism used to mean that you used to make comments or judge people on the color of their skin, but now racism means disagreeing with black people. That's what it means. It means disagreeing with black people. You're a racist. Why? You disagree with this guy who's black. I didn't have anything to say about him being black. I disagree with his spending. Yeah, that's racism. Okay, then I'm a racist. Whatever. I think America, by the way, I think that Barack Obama cashed the check of white guilt, made a deal with the American people, basically, that said, you vote for me, and you'll prove to the world that you're not a racist. Then we can all move into this post-racial future that his 2004 speech allegedly was about. And when Barack Obama refused to condemn racism in the Tea Party because it doesn't exist, he broke that deal, and that's why so many people that's why his approval ratings fall in 35, 40 points. By the way, they say only Nixon could go to China. Only Nixon was enough of an anti-communist to be able to go and reestablish relationships with communist China because everybody knew he wasn't a communist supporter. And only Barack Obama could have reformed entitlement spending, and certainly only Barack Obama could have put this idea of this race relation thing to bed. Barack Obama could have had one speech the second that these liars and other things at MSNBC who said the Tea Party's racist. Barack Obama could have come out and Barack Obama could have said, I don't agree with the Tea Party. I think the Tea Party's values are antithetical to everything I believe in, but people have been criticizing the United States since there's been a republic. They're allowed to criticize my spending policies. I don't agree with the Tea Party. I'm opposed to the Tea Party, but nothing they say has been against me and my race. It's all been about my spending. Of course they're not racist. Let's continue to disagree with the Tea Party, but let's get over this racism thing because it's not true. America's better than that. He could have said that, and not one single person, not ever again would Rachel Maddow or Jon Stewart or Chris Matthews or Ed Schultz ever been able to have raised that racism issue again because they would have been ashamed. But he didn't do that, and we all know why he didn't do that. He didn't do that because he likes having people use the race card. He's gotten where he is because of the race card. Everything he does is about the race card. He is elected president because he's half black. Nobody disagrees with this. Geraldine Ferraro, who was a liberal champion, Democratic champion, vice presidential candidate, historic candidate with Walter Mondale, made the mistake of going off the plantation and saying that if Barack Obama was white, he never would have been a nominee. He has no credentials. And she died in utter disgrace with more hatred leveled at her from her own party than ever came to her from the right. She learned a lesson, I guess. Anyway, that's the Civil War thing. I'm sorry, Frankfurt School. And, they're going to fail. They have to lie because that human nature thing, right? But that's the short form on the Frankfurt School.